All right, so get ready, because today we're going deep on some stuff that I think you're really going to relate to. Family resemblances, some of those weird animal facts, that make you just stop and think for a second. And maybe even we'll do a little daydreaming about dream homes.
Yeah, and what I think is so cool about all of this is it's all coming from one source. It's a long English learning video, and it features a husband and wife, Dan and Vanessa, and it's just full of personal anecdotes. So we get a glimpse into their lives while we uncover some pretty fascinating insights.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're just hanging out with them, listening to their stories, but also kind of getting a little brain workout at the same time, right? So our mission today is to sort of extract those fun facts, but also get you thinking about these topics in your own life.
Yeah, making those connections. So let's kick it off with that age-old question. Who do you most resemble in your family?
Right. I mean, is it your dad's sense of humor or like your mom's knack for remembering like every birthday? It's fascinating how those traits can get passed down. And so in the video, Dan, the husband, he talks about how he inherited his mom's physical features. So like the slender bills, her skin tone. But when it comes to personality, oh, he's his dad's son through and through.
Yeah, and it's not even just like a casual resemblance, right? He takes his dad's chill personality to like a whole other level. He mentions people are always commenting on how laid back he is, but his dad's like even more so. So it really makes you think about that whole nature versus nurture debate,
Yeah.
how much is pre-programmed and how much is like influenced by our environment.
Oh, it's such a complex interplay, and it's not always a clear-cut case of like one parent or the other. Vanessa, the wife, she describes herself as this kind of mix of multiple influences. So she sees her mom and her looks, especially her expressive face. Probably even strangers in Korea were struck by the resemblance.
And it goes beyond just appearance, right? She actually connects those expressive features to her mom's talent for teaching. She's suggesting that those nonverbal cues actually played a role in shaping her own abilities. But then she also credits her dad for her rational side. And she even sees a bit of her grandma's, like, boundless energy in herself.
It's like, boy, this unique blend of all these different ingredients, right? So I'm curious, what's your recipe? What unique combination of traits and quirks and maybe even habits make you you?
Now let's shift gears a little bit and think about a topic that has probably crossed everyone's mind at some point. When did you truly feel like an adult? Was it a specific age, a life event, or maybe like gradual realization?
Yeah, it's a question without a single answer, right?
Yeah.
In the video, Dan and Vanessa have very different perspectives on this.
Yeah.
So Dan, he just throws out the ideal age of 16, but then he's like, well, okay, that's not realistic for most people. For him, it's all about responsibility. Being able to leave your parents' home, support yourself, essentially function independently.
It's a very practical, self-sufficiency focused view, right? Almost like checking off boxes on a checklist for adulthood.
Yeah.
But Vanessa, she has a different take on it. She believes it's less about where you live and more about your decision-making abilities.
So you could be living at home, like for financial reasons, or you're still figuring things out. But if you're calling the shots in your own life, making choices and taking ownership of the consequences, then maybe that's the real marker of adulthood.
It's a really interesting distinction, and it makes me think about how cultural norms play into all of this, too. Because, in some societies, there are actual rituals and traditions that mark this transition into adulthood.
Right.
But in others, like the U.S., it's much more ambiguous.
And maybe that ambiguity makes it even harder to pinpoint that moment when you cross the threshold.
Right.
So do you think, like, cultural expectations play a role in your own journey to adulthood?
That's something to think about, definitely. And then Dan raises another interesting point about the impact of modern distractions, right? Because with so many entertainment options at our fingertips these days, whether it's video games, streaming services, social media, it's almost easier to stay in this, like, extended adolescence, even when we have all the outward markers of adulthood.
Yeah, it's like we almost have to consciously choose to embrace those adult responsibilities and mindsets, even when there are so many temptations, pulling us in other directions. And sometimes those responsibilities, they kind of choose you, whether you're ready or not.
That's exactly what Dan experienced when he became a father. He talks about how having kids, it forced him to grow up in ways he hadn't anticipated.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't necessarily about reaching a certain age, but just about that sudden shift in priorities, that sense of responsibility for another human being.
That's definitely relatable for a lot of parents out there. But what about those who haven't taken that path? Or maybe those who are parents, but they haven't fully embraced that shift in mindset? Are they somehow less adult? It's a complex question without a simple answer. And it kind of leads to another thought-provoking question from Dan. Are these modern distractions making it even easier to linger in that childlike state, even as we accumulate those outward markers of adulthood?
It's a fascinating question to consider, and it's something we can keep in mind as we move on to our next topic. But before we do that, I'm curious to hear from you. When did you feel that shift into adulthood? What were those defining moments or realizations for you?
Thinking about those early adulthood experiences
Hmm.
often brings to mind those like first jobs, the ones that maybe make you cringe a little looking back.
Yeah, nah.
Everyone has at least one of those worst job ever stories, right?
Yeah.
What was yours?
Oh, absolutely. Those early work experiences, they can be formative, to say the least. Sometimes they teach you what you don't want to do, which can be just as valuable as discovering your passion.
Yeah, I think that's true. Well, Dan's story about his dishwashing gig, it definitely falls into that what not to do category.
Hmm.
So he paints this vivid picture of himself as a 16-year-old, homeschooled, a bit awkward, and he gets thrown into this chaotic world of a restaurant kitchen,
Oh, wow.
surrounded by these like gruff older cooks with their salty language and their dark humor. He was completely out of his element.
It's almost like a classic coming of age scenario, isn't it? That clash between like naivete and experience, innocence thrust into a harsh environment.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, like, why do certain work environments like kitchens seem to cultivate these almost stereotypical personalities? Is it the pressure, the fast pace, or maybe some kind of a coping mechanism?
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about. And poor Dan, he wasn't just dealing with culture shock, right? He was slow, he cut his finger on broken glass, and get this, he was even paid under the table, which raises some ethical questions,
Yeah.
especially considering he was probably underage.
It definitely highlights the importance of, understanding your rights as a worker, particularly in those early jobs when you might be more vulnerable to exploitation.
Right.
But even beyond the legal aspects, I think it just speaks to the need for alignment between your personality and your work environment. I mean, clearly that kitchen was a terrible fit for Dan.
He definitely dodged a bullet there. Vanessa's worst job, though, it was a different kind of soul-crushing experience. She talks about this office gig where she had to cold call businesses and try to convince them to attend training sessions about, wait for it,
Oh,
printers.
gosh.
Printers.
Talk about a recipe for
I
boredom.
know, right?
It's almost comical the lengths that companies will go to sell something as mundane as printers. But it does make you wonder if those training sessions were as dry as they sound or if there were some like hidden gems of printer wisdom being shared.
Right. Maybe there's a whole, like, underground world of printer enthusiasts that we don't know about. But Vanessa doesn't give us any insider scoops, unfortunately. The only thing that saved her sanity, apparently, were the company's attempts to, like, inject some fun with things like weekly game shows and dress-up days.
It's almost as if they knew the job itself was a snooze fest and they were desperately trying to compensate.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that sometimes even the most well-intentioned perks can't mask a fundamental mismatch between a person and their work.
Absolutely. Speaking of mismatches, Dan had another doozy of a job before the dishwashing fiasco. So he worked as a photo hawker on those cheesy riverboat tours, taking pictures of tourists and then trying to upsell them on overpriced prints.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he even admits, he's like, it felt like a total ripoff. And he was constantly cringing internally.
It's interesting how those early work experiences can sometimes shape our views on ethics and fairness.
Right.
It's like a real life lesson in the consequences of like prioritizing profit over integrity.
Yeah, and the kicker is he ended up getting fired because someone stole one of his pictures, but he says it was secretly a relief. Sometimes getting pushed out of a bad situation can be a blessing in disguise.
It can definitely open up new possibilities. And I think even those early job experiences, even the unpleasant ones, they can provide like valuable lessons about work ethic, resilience, and just navigating different personalities.
So true. It's all part of the journey, right? Now, speaking of journeys, let's shift gears to something a bit more aspirational: travel dreams.
Okay.
If you had unlimited time and budget, where would you go?
Ah, the ultimate travel fantasy. I think we all have those dream destinations kind of tucked away in our minds.
Right.
So where do Dan and Vanessa's wanderlust lead them?
Well, Dan's picks, they definitely paint him as a nature enthusiast, top of his list. The Grand Canyon, which he considers a must-see, he's never been, but it just holds this almost like mythical status in his mind.
It's understandable. I mean, the Grand Canyon has this incredible power to evoke, like, awe and wonder. It's a place that's been shaped by time and forces beyond our comprehension.
Absolutely. He's also drawn to the Pacific Northwest, with its lush forests and stunning hiking trails. And he specifically mentions Seattle's, cool vibe as a stark contrast to what he calls sprawling, stinky Los Angeles.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting how, like, personal preferences shape our travel desires, right?
Right.
He clearly values nature and a more laid-back atmosphere, which those regions definitely offer in abundance.
hmm
And his comment about LA is a reminder that travel isn't just about seeing new places, but also about experiencing different ways of life.
And sometimes it's about escaping the familiar, right?
Yeah.
So Vanessa, she shares Dan's fascination with the Grand Canyon, but she wants to go beyond the typical tourist experience.
Okay.
She talks about hiking and camping, immersing herself in the vastness of it all.
It's like she wants to connect with the raw power of nature, you know?
Right.
To feel small in the face of something so grand and ancient. It's a desire that resonates with a lot of people, especially in our increasingly urbanized world.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Her other picks are equally nature-focused. She mentions a northeast road trip to explore those dramatic, rugged coastlines. And then there's Yosemite, which is a classic for a reason,
Yeah.
but apparently incredibly difficult to book these days.
Yeah. Yosemite's popularity, it just speaks to the enduring allure of those iconic landscapes. And the difficulty in booking, it highlights the importance of planning ahead, you know?
Yeah.
It's a reminder that those truly special experiences, they often require a bit of effort and preparation.
Speaking of preparation, let's transition from those breathtaking landscapes to something a bit closer to home, the kitchen.
Oh,
What are your go-to no-fail meals to cook at home? Those dishes you can whip up without even thinking.
the comfort food zone. I think we all have those culinary staples that kind of bring us back to center. What are Dan and Vanessa's favorites?
Well, Dan's a big fan of what he calls bulk meals. Those hearty one-pot dishes that are perfect for leftovers?
Yeah.
His top pick, chili. He loves the simplicity of it, the fact that it's just so satisfying, and even how the flavors deepen over time.
It sounds like a very practical choice for someone who, like, values efficiency and no-fuss cooking.
Right.
But there's also something kind of comforting about chili, isn't there?
Oh, yeah,
It's a dish that evokes, like, warmth and togetherness.
definitely. Though he does share a rather cringeworthy story about getting food poisoning from chili that he left out on the counter for too long back in his college days.
Oh, no.
So I guess even the most reliable recipes can backfire if you don't follow those, food safety guidelines.
A good reminder for all of us. But
Yeah.
thankfully, that experience didn't ruin chili for him.
Right.
And Vanessa seems to be on board with the chili appreciation, too. But she also adds a slightly lighter option to the mix. Fish tacos.
Oh, nice.
She describes them so vividly, with the flaky white fish, spicy cabbage slaw, creamy avocado, and all the fixings.
It sounds like such a delicious balance of flavors and textures.
Yeah.
And I love how even simple food choices can reveal something about our personalities.
Right.
Like Vanessa's fish tacos seem to reflect a love for fresh ingredients and vibrant flavors.
Absolutely. And while she enjoys those, more indulgent meals from time to time, her other go-tos are all about soup.
Oh, wow.
Butternut squash, Italian veggie. She even calls herself a soup fanatic.
It seems like soup can be surprisingly versatile, right?
Yeah.
It can be hearty and comforting or light and refreshing. And it's a great way to get your veggies.
Absolutely. And what I think is interesting here is, like, the lack of chef ambition.
Right.
These are all, like, tasty, nourishing meals, but ultimately simple and reflective of their, busy lives.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that home cooking doesn't have to be, like, complicated or gourmet to be satisfying.
So true. And now, let's shift from those everyday meals to something a bit more fantastical.
Okay.
It's time to unleash our inner interior designers and talk dream homes.
Right.
If anything were possible, what 3 features would your ideal home have to have?
A chance to indulge in a little architectural escapism.
Right.
It's fascinating how our dream homes often reflect, like, our values, our aspirations, maybe even our hidden desires.
Well, Dan doesn't hold back with his vision.
Okay.
He wants an ocean view living room,
Okay.
but not just any living room.
Right.
He's talking football stadium sized, with floor-to-ceiling windows that seamlessly connect to an equally epic kitchen.
Wow.
And of course, no dream home is complete without a giant game room, fully equipped with ping pong, pool, video games, the works.
Of course.
He even jokes that he would need Vanessa to like lock him out to get any work done.
It sounds like a haven for entertainment and relaxation.
Right.
That ocean view, it's a recurring theme,
Hmm.
suggesting like a longing for tranquility and expansiveness.
Yeah.
And that massive game room, I wonder if it reflects like a playful side,
Mhm.
a desire to tap into those like carefree childhood days.
Maybe a way to unwind and de-stress after a long day.
Yeah.
Vanessa, on the other hand, is a bit more grounded in her choices. So she agrees on the big window.
Yeah.
But for her, it's less about the view and more about the natural light it would bring into the space.
Okay.
Her must-have. A huge filming studio.
Oh, cool.
Fully equipped, multi-wall setup.
Nice.
Which makes sense, considering her passion for filmmaking.
It's great how our dream homes can like incorporate our professional aspirations as well.
Right.
And it's not just about work either.
Right.
Vanessa also wants a rooftop deck for stargazing,
Oh, how nice.
which adds a touch of whimsy and connection to the natural world.
It's a beautiful combination, isn't it?
Yeah.
A space for like creative expression, professional pursuits, and those moments of quiet contemplation under the stars.
Yeah.
What about you? Does your dream home lean toward practicality, escapism, or maybe a blend of both?
Now let's take a detour from the world of dream homes and venture into the realm of fascinating animal facts.
Okay.
Are you ready for some mind-blowing nature nuggets?
Oh, I am always up for some animal trivia.
All right.
What do Dan and Vanessa have in store for us?
Well, Dan kicks things off with a fact that apparently blew his mind as a kid, butt-breathing turtles.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That sounds unbelievable.
It does, right? But certain freshwater turtles can actually absorb oxygen through their butts.
No way.
Yeah.
Through their butts.
Yeah, when they're hibernating underwater in cold temperatures.
That is wild.
It's incredible how nature finds these ingenious solutions to, like, survival challenges.
I mean, who would thought breathing through your butt was a viable option?
It really makes you wonder, like, what other hidden talents and bizarre adaptations are out there in the animal kingdom, right?
Right.
What evolutionary pressures led to that development? It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, even about creatures we think we know.
Absolutely. And then Vanessa throws in a fact that's a little more visceral. Brace yourself. Caterpillar soup.
Okay.
She describes how a caterpillar essentially liquefies itself inside its cocoon,
Oh, wow.
digesting its own body before transforming into a butterfly.
It's a fascinating, albeit slightly disturbing process, but I think it speaks to the incredible power of metamorphosis, right? Even when things seem chaotic or destructive, there's potential for like radical transformation and beautiful outcomes.
It's a good life lesson to keep in mind, even if it comes from a creepy crawly example.
Yeah.
Now, Dan chimes in with his fascination for albatrosses, those majestic seabirds with their like incredible wingspans. He talks about how they need a running start to take off, how their babies are vulnerable to sharks when they're learning to fly. But then he drops this mind-blowing fact. They can fly for 10,000 miles on a single flap of their wings, as long as the wind is in their favor.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a testament to the incredible efficiency and resilience of nature.
Yeah.
And speaking of resilience, Vanessa adds a detail that kind of complicates our understanding of their mating habits.
Mm-hmm.
They mate for life, which sounds romantic,
Mm-hmm.
but they also have these like extra partners on the side.
Oh, interesting.
It's a reminder that the animal kingdom doesn't always conform to our human ideas of relationships, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much diversity in like social structures and mating behaviors.
It challenges our assumptions, doesn't it? And speaking of challenging assumptions,
Yeah.
Vanessa has one final fact that's sure to blow your mind. It's about the mantis shrimp. Those vibrant, feisty creatures that pack a serious punch. They have 12 to 16 photoreceptors in their eyes,
Wow.
compared to our measly 3,
Wow.
which means they can see a spectrum of colors we can't even imagine.
That's incredible.
And their punches are so powerful, they can break through bulletproof glass.
Seriously, those mantis shrimp are like nature superheroes. I'm definitely going to look up some videos after this.
Yeah, they're a marvel of evolution. Now let's shift gears to a topic that's distinctly American, Thanksgiving.
Oh.
For those who aren't familiar, it's a holiday celebrated in late November, rooted in harvest traditions, but now widely observed by people of all backgrounds.
And Dan cuts right to the chase. Thanksgiving is all about the food. We're talking the classic feast. A whole roasted turkey, gravy, stuffing, green bean casserole, mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that southern sweet potato casserole, which is basically a sugar bomb topped with marshmallows.
It's a meal that's designed to indulge, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's also a strategic element to it.
Oh, yeah.
Vanessa points out that the tartness of the cranberry sauce is a perfect counterpoint to all those rich, savory dishes. It's a culinary balancing act.
It's all about creating that symphony of flavors.
Yeah.
And beyond the food, Thanksgiving is also about, like, family gatherings.
Yeah.
Everyone comes together, often hosted by one member, to share the meal in each other's company. And there's even a tradition of going around the table and sharing what you're thankful for, which might sound cheesy, but it does encourage a moment of reflection and appreciation.
It's a reminder that food can be a powerful tool for connection and creating shared memories.
Yeah.
And speaking of traditions, no American holiday would be complete without football on TV.
Right. It's like the unofficial soundtrack to Thanksgiving. Whether you're a diehard fan or not, the game is just part of the experience.
It's those little rituals that shape our cultural identity. Now let's wrap up our deep dive with a topic that's sure to resonate: regretful purchases.
Ooh, yes.
We've all been there, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
That impulse buy that made perfect sense at the time, but now just gathers dust in the back of the closet.
Totally.
What's your biggest purchase regret?
Well, Dan's story is a cautionary tale about those tech gadgets that promise the world but don't always deliver. So he bought these expensive headphones, which Vanessa wasn't too keen on from the start, that ended up hurting his ears.
Oh, no.
Then to add insult to injury, their cat chewed the cord within seconds of him bringing them home.
Oh, that's rough. It's almost comical, isn't it?
I know.
The perfect storm of bad decisions and feline mischief.
Right.
But it also highlights how that sunk cost fallacy can trap us.
Yeah.
You know, we're often hesitant to admit a mistake even when it's staring us in the face.
Yeah.
So we hold on to things that aren't serving us.
We've all been there.
Vanessa's regret is smaller in scale but relatable nonetheless. Overpriced Starbucks tea. It's that classic example of falling for the cool drink fantasy, only to be disappointed by the reality.
It happens.
It's a good reminder to be mindful of those impulse purchases, especially when they're driven by like image or aspiration rather than genuine need. And it's interesting how their spending styles differ too.
Yeah.
Dan seems to be more carefree with smaller amounts,
Right.
while Vanessa is more value-driven.
That's definitely something to consider.
Mhm.
How do our values influence our spending habits?
Yeah.
Now, Dan shares another regret that speaks to the perils of tourist traps.
Okay.
He fell for the allure of a turtle museum,
Oh.
but it turned out to be a major letdown with barely any turtles in sight.
Oh, no.
It's disappointing when those paid attractions don't live up to the hype, you know? It's a good reminder to do your research and read reviews before shelling out your hard-earned cash.
Especially with all the information available online these days. There's no excuse for falling for those tourist traps anymore.
Exactly.
And Vanessa echoes that sentiment, adding that paid entry disappointments seem to be a common travel experience. Finally, she shares a regret that's probably familiar to many parents out there: toys her kid doesn't use.
Oh, yeah.
It's that impulse to buy something we think our kids will love, only to have it ignored or quickly discarded.
We've covered so much ground today, from genetics and dream homes to butt-braining turtles and the perils of overpriced tea. It's been quite a journey.
It has, and it's a journey that highlights the power of observation and reflection.
Right.
What seemingly mundane details in our everyday lives might hold deeper meaning or spark unexpected insights.
So what's one thing from this deep dive that stuck with you? Is it a new perspective on your own life, a quirky animal fact to share at your next gathering, or maybe even a renewed appreciation for the simplicity of a bowl of soup?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe even give those mantis shrimp videos a watch.
Yes.
They're truly mesmerizing.
Until next time, keep diving deep.